for people who don't know, and I can't even read your whole introduction. You're such a luminary that it's like you're a best-selling author, speaker, spiritual teacher, ascension guide, multi-dimensional channel, intuitive, animal communicator, energy healer, light worker, vision, energy healer. I assume people will be able to go to lauriespagna.com and sample your services and get a session with you.
Well, there's lots of great stuff over there. They can get lots of free gifts, like sample DNA activation and stuff to learn about animal communication and developing their gifts. And there's lots of stuff over there at the website.
Awesome. I saw at least 3 things for free that looked amazing. Yes. And you are, I mean, you've had near-death experiences that showed you things. Well, so here's the thing. I want to throw this out to you. Because, you know, people are like, okay, well, what's in it for me? How can Laurie affect me? You ask people, are they a light worker, or are they a star seed, or an earth seed, or a guardian, or a way shower? What's the difference, and how do we know which we are?
Well, I think what's more important to understand is the concept of the Indigo family tribes.
Okay.
If you're on a summit like this, and if you're actively interested in the concept of ascension, the evolution of humanity, if you're interested in expanding consciousness and certainly in assisting humanity with that evolution, then you're in the Indigo family tribes. All the rest of it, those are just definitions of how we identify the service, the contribution, our journey, what we contribute. But really, we're all members of the Indigo family races who are really participating in a really active and conscious way to assist humanity through this evolution. To the free gift on the website where people can learn about that. So yeah, does that make sense?
It does, and there's just really no doubt that we're not going through something. We're going through a lot of something, and as one friend of mine described, it's like you're tossing a salad up in the air and it hasn't landed yet. We don't know how things are going to land, but it seems to me we've just are forced, well, as I've heard other people say, by force or by flow, we're going to get the lessons. And to live in the moment right now just seems to be the most precious thing we can do, right?
Well, you do have to be living in the moment, because the new paradigm is all about living in the now. It's not about linear time anymore.
Right.
But I can tell you how things are going to end up, and that is that they're going to end up wherever you, whoever you are, perceive them to end up, whatever you perceive it to be, and also in conjunction with your vibrational resonance, whoever you are. So whatever you're perceiving your reality to project to you, as you pay more and more attention to whatever you perceive your reality to project at you, it's really coming from you. And that perception, whether you judge it to be good or bad, right or wrong, positive or negative, ascending or descending, however you see and perceive that to be, however you energetically resonate with that, that's where it's going to end up. That's where you'll end up. Because let me ask you, Scott, how many Earth paradigm realities are there?
I don't know. I have no idea.
There's infinite.
Of course.
So okay. Even if you had heard anything about what Brooks was saying earlier, it was fascinating. I got the tail end of his interview when he was saying he didn't use the word bleed through, but I heard the word bleed through. There's realities coming into this one that are conscious, and there's realities going into others that are conscious. And those aren't the words he used. I can't say the exact ones, but they're like bleed throughs. And what those are effectively is the infinite in spiritual language, because I'm not a scientist. They are infinite paradigms of reality overlapping and intersecting in various frequencies of consciousness, which are based on what we see, perceive, interact with our consciousness, and what we experience and project into our reality.
So how does that, knowing that, help us in our day-to-day?
Oh my God. It so helps us. Because if you can understand that everything in the external reality is a projection of your consciousness,
yes,
and that nothing that you're being told in the external reality is absolutely true, except few absolute truths. There are very few. You have to start to realize what's absolutely true and what's just a judgment, an opinion, a belief system, a perspective, an ideology, right? So, but once you understand the few absolute truths, which are based in universal and spiritual law, where they agree, quantum physics agrees.
Yep.
Those are the few absolutes, and we don't even know if those will still be absolute tomorrow, because what's sacred today may be something new tomorrow.
Sure.
But generally, we can follow these absolutes once we know them and understand that anything that is not that is simply a projection of our own individual consciousness, or potentially some kind of energetic bleed through, which we could also terminology that to be some kind of our own type of karmic residue that is unresolved potentially. In which case there's some kind of contract or agreement for us to resolve it, address it, and resolve it. Does that make sense?
It does. And so like you said, what was sacred before, what was a sacred cow before, later maybe just a bull. Just bull.
Yeah, perfect example, Newtonian physics, Newtonian science. And then the evolution of, I'm referencing science because it was the conversation before that I picked up at the end, and it was where my thoughts went. But
sure.
What I mean to say is we're in a new paradigm now, and everything that ever was no longer is.
See,
and we're redefining reality.
Exactly. We're redefining it. We're surfing the new waves that are presented to us, these new energies. And when we are experiencing these new energies, it's like we've been telling ourselves in the spiritual tribe for a long time that we control our reality. We can create our own reality. We are God, and that sort of thing. But those precepts have been really put to the challenge these days, because even a lot of spiritual people are having a little trouble navigating these. What would you say to them? How would you instruct them on how to keep centered and adapt to what's happening?
Sorry.
Whoop.
Yeah. Well, first thing is, the reason people are being tested is because every part of our unconscious is coming up to the surface to be addressed. Every part, every aspect of our unconscious. So in all ways, people are being kind of like unraveled in that sense, because the overall goal of ascension and this evolutionary shift is to bring humanity into a more stable, coherent way of existing. And that coherent way of existing and being is going to be a heart-centered way of love and of peace and of higher consciousness, higher awareness, higher being a relative word, of course, but more clarity, more purity in our ways of being. And that everything on earth going forward is really going to be designed for the most benevolent, best of all beings, where no longer can there be a usurping of power. No longer this hierarchical system that we've been existing in, this patriarchal hierarchical system that benefits the few to the harm and expense and detriment of the many, that will no longer be tolerated. So we can see that all the systems and structures, including our own beliefs and belief systems, our own perspectives, which might have been harmful to others, especially harmful and non-beneficial to the collective, those are being dismantled. That's why people are having a challenging time. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be a challenge for us to, even the things we kind of want to go away, we might have some unconscious attachments to them. We're having a hard time seeing them go. I mean, so I'm preparing the holiday issue of Radiance magazine right now, right? The November, December issue has the deadlines in October. We're there. And I've talked to people about it, and they're like, well, thinking ahead to the holidays just seems weird. I've always loved the holidays because people's hearts seem to be so open. They are so much more open. They're more giving and loving. And I always look forward to that. And we could really use a heart check during these times. Do you see how do you see the holidays happening with masks and social distancing? Are we still going to let our hearts flow?
Well, first, let me just say my personal reality does not have any of that in it. So I've just been spending the entire summer kind of on the road. I spent most of it in Arkansas. Then I drove up to South Dakota. And now I'm on my way over to New Mexico and then Arizona. but
Nice.
I haven't had any of that kind of experience. It's shown up in my reality almost like not at all. So the way I see it is, again, I want to reinforce the old paradigm. We were sharing a collective experience that was based in collective unconsciousness. But now we're sharing mostly a collective experience that's based in the awakening ascension journey.
Sure.
Our personal experience becomes more and more a reflection of where we're at, where we're vibing, what we believe and perceive. So I know, because I'm a conscious creator and because I know how to work with higher intelligence of the universe and the laws of the universe, I got very clear about the experience that I wanted to have through this 2020 gateway, this 2020 window. And I've been co-creating that with others through my sacred retreats. We just finished a retreat in Arkansas on the crystal bed working with DNA. And the most amazing story, got to just say this really fast.
Yeah, go for it.
While we were there, it was a 10-day retreat. It was a 10-day retreat, and we had working with the crystals right on the hot there. And one of the days was it was a rainy day, so we made the whole day a sacred day. And am I still on? Am I good? Because it froze up a bit.
They could only see me, but we could hear you.
It looks like I am. Maybe.
You're on. We can hear you,
right.
but not.
Okay, good. Thank you. Sorry.
Sure.
Okay, good. Sorry. So, we'd had a whole sacred day. We did like sacred fire ceremony, sacred cacao ceremony, sacred healing, sacred, all kinds of the whole day. And at one of the breaks, somebody in the group went and checked their app on their phone, which we don't use phones, but they had a break, and they looked at the human app, and exactly where we are had a major spike, the large spike on the planet, the whole planet. On that day, exactly where we were, in the middle of Arkansas, in a national park. So our group of 40 people made a spike that was larger than anywhere else on the planet that lasted through the day. Now, so if you understand Schumann's resonance, that is a scientific measurement of energetic spikes on the planet. So where the energy generally is of such a high, clear, pure frequency, it's enough to be scientifically measured that area of the planet is experiencing some kind of flux that we would associate with high vibration, clarity, purity, love, those more desirable states that we're all coming into with our evolutionary process. So I just want to say, you can have any experience you want.
Absolutely.
But you do have to be really, I'm saying you, but I mean all of us, we do really have to be super tuned into our own inner frequency, our own inner vibration, our projections, our beliefs, because, if you're believing the external narrative, and that is very easy to believe for the collective right now, because we're being told a lot of stuff that is someone's truth or someone's agenda or someone's belief or someone's judgment, but it doesn't make it absolutely true. That's really hard, but to get that.
I'm with you. And as you were saying that, I was picking apart my question, and I agree. And I won't ever ask that question again. In fact, and what I'll do.
No, that's good. People need to hear it.
Yeah. It's not helpful. It was just sort of a, kind of clever way to come at a subject like where are we going to go for the holidays. But the fact is, you are correct. And when we just can't participate in the old stuff at all. We have to disassociate from the old stuff, connect, with our source connection, and just look with new eyes. I think we used New Age before. I think this is the New Age. We need to bring that back or something. Well, no, we don't need to do anything.
Well, let me just say, Scott, also, the idea that we have to disassociate, I think is a potentially, I wouldn't use that word disassociate.
Strong, yeah.
We have to take 100% responsibility for whatever shows up in our field. So if something that's in our field, we don't just disassociate and sweep it under the carpet. Carpet sweeping does not work. If carpet sweeping worked, the Woodstock generation, or maybe that's the wrong way to say it. I'm sorry, let me correct myself. If carpet sweeping worked, the pre-wavers, before star seeds started implanting into the human realm, the pre-wavers, we would have had consciousness by 2012, or maybe some of us did, but obviously lots of us didn't.
Sure.
So and I do see that as a collective moment that is a catapult triggering for all of this. But my point is to say, carpet sweeping, that's my terminology for disassociating, for putting things in, for denial, for the collective that doesn't want to look at the shadow, that doesn't want to face those parts of us that are seemingly stuff that we don't like, or don't or that we might judge as wrong, or maybe there are things we might label as dark or dark agenda, or that's not very common in this community.
Nope.
Because we're much more open to that. But I just want to say, it's not about disassociating or carpet sweeping or pretending, because that does not work. It is about fully processing it, fully owning every aspect of shadow that comes in, fully owning every part of us that really is not necessarily in love and acceptance with everything, that sees some things as perhaps malevolent, including entities, demonics, dark force, like everything, and really learning how to fully embrace and embody all of that in the sense that we become one with all that is. And through that oneness, which is a process, not a pill, does not happen overnight. This is like a journey for all of us.
Yeah.
We come in so deeply into our heart center that we understand that all those things are just aspects of the old paradigm that we were experiencing from a place of unconsciousness, that we did to one another. And I want to add something else to this, is that when we start to realize that, the shadow aspects of what's happening on Earth right now is a result in part of humanity not accepting our own shadow aspects. In part, it's because we've been so good at loving and that they're finally coming to the surface, that what was hidden or secret or covert or swept under the carpet is now being exposed. So in part, it's great. And in another part, we could identify it as that which we were unwilling to accept, embrace, and acknowledge as part of ourselves, and receive with that heart-centered love and acceptance and peace. And it is what it was. It is what it was what it was. It is what it is. It is what it was, etc. That's why it's coming up in such a big way right now for humanity, because it is meant to be resolved. It can only be resolved. Can only be resolved if we're willing to address it fully, wholly, and completely.
Well, and even when you said shadow work and the darkness and those things about aspects of ourselves, it would have been easy for me to bypass that question. I was going to ask you, and then you volunteered, and that last bit you just shared. And then I want to go even further into it. And you said embracing all of it, because if we are spiritual, if we believe in oneness, that doesn't exclude anybody, including pedophiles, including criminal, including whatever kinds of person. It's all us. We're all one. And if we really...
Well, we're all an aspect of the one true divine source. Okay. And that is different. And even when you say, like at the earlier part, when we say we are God, well, we are an aspect of that one true divine source. And that, because we're not God itself, because if we were, we wouldn't be individuated in a body. We would be the whole. So we're identifying as an individuation, but we're allowing that divine source to become more embodied within us.
I think
through that recognition.
I think what we're saying in the same way is we're not just the raindrop, we're the ocean in the raindrop.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Sure.
Beautiful.
So you teach a school of Ascension. What are we going to learn there?
Well, you know what, like right now, for example, I have a 6-week class online. We just started it last night about this. It's really just to help people navigate the way, because see, here's the thing. The old paradigm, the operating system was separation and duality. External reality had control and power over us. The external reality was what we believed and perceived was real. And that external reality that we've lived in at least on Earth, was based on this hierarchical, patriarchal system. And everything that we experienced was like sort of from this consciousness of, I am powerless over my external reality. Well, this new paradigm, which is already here, has an entirely new operating system. But the old paradigm, the old hierarchical system that we've been operating under, it doesn't know the rules. So this new operating system, this new way of being in this new paradigm is what we need to really learn, not only through the mind, but through the whole body being energy field. And so that is where everything in the external reality, this is what we've been talking about, is a projection of what's going on internally. Right. And so we have to step into our mastery, all of us, of understanding how our thoughts, our beliefs, our belief systems, our projections create an energetic response, which typically leads to an emotional response that creates a physiological response in the body that begins to vibrate out from us and around us, that creates you could call it a biofeedback loop that shows us what's going on. And so now this new way of operating becomes a new way of us learning how to come into our mastery by working with the internal field, the internal aspect of us, in a whole new way. So that's really a huge part of what I do. And it involves meditation, clearing, healing, activation. Huge part of what I do is working with the DNA, because of course, all of our storylines are in the DNA. So typically our first two strands, that's like our genetics and our ancestral lineage. And so the records and the stories from our ancestors, our lineage that we took on, those first two strands, I call them corrupted. The reason I call them corrupted, it's not that they're entirely corrupted. Your beautiful face, your body works great, you have wonderful, it's mostly from the old paradigm, and the vast majority of information and coding in that DNA is outmoded, obsolete, and has been largely interfered with. And if we're willing to take it to the star family or extraterrestrial storyline, humanity, the original human design, has been drastically manipulated multiple times through the history of our linear evolution. So those two strands are containing all that manipulation and all that false information and corruption. Like, for example, you have programs in there like, divide and conquer, which makes people fight and argue and disagree and debate and be cynics and I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right. You got false programs in there like arrogance and superiority. I'm better than you, you're better than me, I'm the top, I'm the head guy, I'm the boss, I'm more advanced. You've got stuff in the DNA coded for death, disease, dying, which is not original and organic to the true organic divine blueprint. So all that stuff has to be cleaned up, all that stuff. I could go on and on. You got programs and stuff for, sexual misery, which is going on planet Earth right now, sexual identity disorder that's going on planet Earth right now, on and on. So once we start cleaning that up, we're also simultaneously activating the other 10 strands that have been dormant, which have our superhuman abilities, which have the solutions for Earth's problems, which help us to all become healers and intuitives. And
I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah. So I kind of went off on it because you're asking me, but I could talk for a long time.
Well, yeah, just you specialize in DNA activation of dormant DNA. Now, has it always been there, or did the new energies and are the new children being born with new stuff? And what kind of secret powers are you helping activate in people with your process?
Okay, so first, have they always been, first of all, how did I get it? I'll just say really fast. Sure. I do believe that a huge part of it was activated for me when I had the near-death experiences in Maui while I was living there. But I also know I had what I call an induction experience, which is really, I identify as a star seed, where I had literally had a divine appointment to meet my star family race races, or a group of my star family, on a ship where basically it was like a plasma type teletransport experience. And I know that the basics of it were activated within me enough so that I could start knowing how to play with it and practice with it and use it. And then I started giving it to my animals, who started benefiting. And then I started giving it to others who were giving me feedback about how much it was changing them and their lives were improving. And then it got more and more. I've just been working with it now from a spiritual perspective for over, I don't know, almost 15 years, I'd say. It's, you know, maybe longer. I don't know. I just lose track of the time. But so
there's no time.
That's where it started from. Now, what I've learned is the more I clear out the corrupted parts that are just unconscious as I work with the divine in my own DNA, the more I activate the dormant part that's more aligned with the divine and with the true organic ascension journey for humanity.
Okay.
The more I'm doing that, the more my own superpowers are coming online, and the more I'm realizing how people that I work with are giving me the feedback about what's happening for them. So it's not that I'm necessarily activating their superpowers directly. It's that I'm helping them. I'm facilitating through high vibrational resonance to activate what's dormant in others. Because we all have our unique gifts, talents, and abilities. We all have our unique expressions. We still get to maintain our individuality as we come into our alignment. We're not losing our individuality. We're just awakening so much more, so much better, so much more fabulous. So it's within everybody, but it is vibrational resonance. And there are like codes that help you to access it, in the sense that, first of all, you really like the gateway to it is the compassion gene in the heart center. So in order to access those other strands, I mean, you really have to be really truly living in the heart, compassionately understanding, you know, from that frequency bandwidth, because you can't access a lot of those other abilities without being in that center. Now, this is part of why everybody wants the DNA. Like, why is everybody studying the DNA? Old paradigm. And you can give your DNA away here, there, and everywhere. Oh, it's really nice. You can take a COVID test, and oh, by the way, we get your DNA.
Right.
It's like, well, I mean, people want to figure out what the heck's in there and why it's so good. But you don't have to that's not how it gets found out. That's not how it gets discovered. You have to go through the heart center, which is a primary portal of its own.
See, to reach those part, because people who hear about this stuff and they want it, and they say, I want this ascension. I want to communicate with benevolent ETs. I want to do, but the fact is you have to leave behind so much that you've used in life that's been useful to you, but doesn't serve you because it blocks your heart. You have to open your heart. You have to love. You have to love everyone and have love. And that is really the key, isn't it?
Well, I think it's not that you necessarily have to love everyone, but you have to recognize that all beings are the divine incarnate, and therefore, because they exist, they are lovable. They are.
How many people do I not have to love and still make it?
You do have to treat everyone as though, to the degree that they are all embodiments of the divine.
There you go. Yes.
So, you know, there's different kinds of love in our reality. I would say you have to love from a place of magnanimity.
Yes.
And that is, by the way, that is also a code that is stored up in the dormant DNA. Magnanimity, the ability to love all without necessarily making it wrong or bad or judging it. And that's not something we learn through the brain. And this is the thing is, like, I mean, you can learn it through the brain, but it's something you embody and it gets activated in your frequency bandwidth. The other thing is, when people say they want it, you see, they don't quite always realize, like, speakers like me will come here and we show up and we are delivering I believe we're delivering our best, our most benevolent best that we can offer here in our service and contribution. But we don't sit there saying all of our pain and suffering. It's not an easy journey for anybody.
Sure.
And so, like, for example, even, you know, when I've seen this lots of times, when somebody gets a healing, sometimes massive amounts of density are being cleared. And if they get trapped in the density, you know, they can have to deal with that for a while. It doesn't have to be that way, but it can be. So when you're working through, this is the shadow part. And those moments, it can be very easy to quit, to say, forget it all, to say, I don't want to deal with it, to say that, to put it on somebody else, which is an old paradigm of blame, blaming someone else, to not take responsibility. I mean, there's all kinds of these escape routes that I call them frequency fences, because if you understand that when something's being cleared from you, it's because you're about to make a big jump. But you have to get over the frequency fence, which is basically an energetic fence, in a sense, that says at this higher frequency, that old stuff can't come in. And it's being cleared from your field. Now, if you hold on to it or attach to it or play into the old games of yours, which I call them games, but self-sabotage, anger, resentment, judgment, blame, shame, regret, remorse, all those lower frequency experiences, you can't get through the fence to level up. Now, if we look at the collective state of humanity right now, by the way, we could easily see that's going on.
Absolutely.
It's really challenging when it's happening to you personally, because typically, like I've seen this, it really came out a lot with like the whole COVID thing. It comes out a lot around, presidential debates and things like that, because somebody's hooked into their old paradigm. Somebody else is on the other side of the frequency fence and they're calling something out for what it is. And that person in the old paradigm suddenly gets some kind of, what's the word?
Inspiration or
well, if it's happening beautifully, but if they're having to pass through their shadow to get through the frequency fence, they're going to lash out, attack, judge, criticize, shame, say you're wrong, hold on to their old belief systems. And this is their shadow work for them to resolve it. Because here's just someone on some kind of frequency saying, hey, maybe that's not what we've been told it to be. Maybe it's this. And someone's like, how dare you say that? How dare you? That's wrong. So this is when you're up against a frequency fence. In a sense, it's a trigger. You have a trigger moment. And you have an opportunity to level of consciousness, higher being relative, lighter, purer, clearer, more aligned with the divine. Can you get through, that own trigger area? That's a really challenging part. And so this is why I'm saying, in order to really connect with star family races, activate all that DNA, that stuff's going to happen. It's part of the journey. And
well,
that's not always the fun, brilliant part that every speaker comes on and says, but it does happen.
Because triggers are messy, and I suppose we can work on triggers in ourselves. Certainly in relationship, triggers come up even more. You can look at them much more closely and much more often, but you can work on them yourself as well, right?
Yeah, well, if you understand that your triggers are generally going to be around 5 particular areas, generally, and maybe this could change too, but they're going to be around money, abundant, because that's a major theme, any form of money and wealth, any form of, you could even include energy exchange, but anywhere there's agreements around that, or belief systems, etc. Anywhere where there's stuff related to relationships, which you just said, anywhere where there's stuff related to authority figures, which is a form of relationships, anything that's related to physical health. So COVID, for example, is one of those major triggering issues for people. If you tell someone COVID isn't what they think it is and they get really triggered, it's one of those key areas. Health, physical health and well-being is an area. Spirituality is another one, because people are so deeply ingrained into their spiritual beliefs, potentially. The whole spiritual science movement, where they disagree, where they agree, that's a triggering area. I know I'm missing one, but anyway, those are the ones that I wasn't off the top, like money, body health and well-being, relationships to people, places, things, organizations, spirituality. Did I say health and well-being? I did. I know I'm missing something, but anyway, those are some of the major ones.
Someone named Bernice mentions in the questions here, they talked about how alchemy is important here, especially in overcoming emotions. So you agree with that?
Well, alchemy is, yes. And when you think about the idea, what is alchemy? It's an alchemical process that we go through. And depending sounds like I'm intuiting that she's using a healing modality that's somehow involves that. It's really a process of transforming in this case, referring to our emotions, and that's true, but it's about transforming the experience. And that's what alchemy is. It's a transformational experience or process to change the experience. The result is the change of the experience or a change of consciousness, an up-leveling of consciousness by transforming the emotion or the belief or whatever it is, the energy body. This is even why people do chakra clearing, which in the old paradigm we had very individual chakras. In the new paradigm we have a clear, pure channel, like a tube torus. But we have to clear all those energy fields. That's a form of alchemy. But of course, there's unique modalities that use alchemizing processes, and I have a sense that's what she's referring to. But yes, I agree for sure, because we are transforming ourselves mentally, emotionally, spiritually, energetically, aurically, vibrationally. I mean, just the totalness, wholly and completely. We have to go through transformation. Yes.
I've been given some notes that the schedule is shifting a little bit. We have a few more minutes only, but I wanted to ask you, you're an animal communicator, an animal expert. Is telepathy easier with animals than humans?
No, once you get telepathy, it's all easy.
Okay.
Well, okay, maybe, you know what? That's my interpretation. I'm super telepathic, but maybe that might be somebody else's experience might be different. I just want to say the animals are really open. So that's maybe true because humans are not as open. Animals generally, they want to communicate with us. They're here to help us. They really already embody all of the virtues that we're just learning. They already embody the virtues of the new paradigm, and their being in physical form on the earthly plane, the physical plane, has been for the eternity of the animal kingdom existence, which we're part of the animal kingdom, but when we talk about animals, we mean non-humans in this case, are, what we understand animals to be. They're already embodying all of the virtues that we're learning and developing, and that is part of their service for humanity. And as a collective, they're quite conscious of the fact that they're doing this, although not every individual.
Yeah, they don't look conscious.
Just like not every human individual is. We're not all.
Right.
Depends on the animal.
Right.
Depends on who you're connecting with and what their environment is and what their role is in the ascension journey. But yeah, because if an animal's within a human who's very unconscious, that animal typically will be a little more dense themselves. But if an animal's with a human or in a nature environment that requires high degree of consciousness, so to speak, like whales or dolphins, for example, there's a lot more consciousness there about what their true mission is. Yeah.
Well, and I've seen an influx in these cat clubs. There's one in Long Beach that has survived the whole COVID thing. They're still open, called the Feline Social Club, and you can go, and for like $8 for half an hour, you can go sit with all these cats. And
yeah, very cool.
It's fun. It's healing, and of course, they're different than dogs. Dogs are about unconditional love, obviously, but I know our domesticated companions, these dogs and cats and others, are also sort of here to filter things for us. Isn't that right?
Well, I mean, generally speaking, they have like pretty much three missions in a sense. They want to have an experience just like we do. They're experiencing their world and from their unique perspective and experience, right? Then they're, especially for the ones who live with humans, they tend to be healers and teachers to the human. So they very often do take on they're empaths. They're super sensitives, the animals. So they tend to take on the issues of the human. And just like everything, I mean, the world is typically one big mirror for you, biofeedback loop. So they're doing that in kind of a semi-conscious, to whatever degree the animal's conscious of it. They're doing it in a fairly conscious way. And then the other thing they'll do is take on behaviors to demonstrate behaviors that the human either has to resolve or learn. And that's for the animals that live with humans. Now, animals that don't live with humans, they're typically holding some kind of vibrational frequency wherever they are, or some kind of information. For example, the elephants store up the Earth's history, the records, the Akashic records of the Earth's history. So when you communicate with an elephant, you can find out all kinds of things about the truth of higher truths of Earth's history. and what's going on Earth, because they have that, and the animals will never lie to us. So that's one of the reasons that the divine and the animal kingdom assigned animals as keepers of knowledge and wisdom and energy. Whales have this too, and dolphins, for the waters, for example. They have a history of the waters and all marine life. So you can find out a lot and you can learn a lot and you won't be lied to. You know, it's a great way to, the crystals are also record keepers, by the way. And we don't think of crystals as living beings, but they are. So they have all kinds of records and help us to work with, you know, activate our DNA, our light body, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, the Superman movie had that, the Christopher Reeves version, right? Where he brought some crystals from his planet and planted them, and the Fortress of Solitude grew up, and he had all the records in it. So that writer must have been channeling, huh?
Yeah, well, I mean, we know, of course, that entertainment has a lot of soft and sometimes not so soft disclosure.
Yes.
So I never watched that movie, but that's very cool.
It really was. It really was. Okay, what would you like to say in parting to people? What message would you like what kind of people would be looking for you in your services in your Ascension school, or even just to get a session with you?
Well, first, I don't really do privates anymore. You have to be in my inner circle. I don't really do private sessions so much. But what I would say is that first, they can go to the website at lauriespagna.com. If they want some free gifts to sample stuff out, they can go to lauriespagna.com/DNA activation, DNA activation, learn all about activating the DNA, what that's all about. They can go to lauriespagna.com/free gifts/ starseed to know more about the Indigo family tribes. That's what you brought up, and the ascension process. They can go to lauriespagna.com/free gifts/ crystals to learn more about working with the crystals and how the crystals help us, what's so important about that. I'll give one more. They can go to lauriespagna.com/free gifts/ animals for the people who really want to work with their animals. There's lots of more fun free gifts.
Well, and I'm seeing people are asking and questions about you, and other people are answering them. So they know. They say, is she vegan? Yes, she's vegan. Compassionate living.
I'm not vegan. I would say I'm not vegan. I would say I am mostly vegetarian, mostly vegan. That's what I would say. And I'm on my journey too of clearing old programming that makes think and believe you need to eat animals in order to survive, because that's nothing more than reptilian programming that could be cleared out. And when we eat animals, by the way, I know this is the end of the call, but I can go on. Well, when we eat animals, we actually do generate more of our death hormones in our body, which accelerates the death and dying process. So it's actually, if you like living, it's a good thing to try to do your best to stop. But what I'd like to say in the last is just not only thank you to Neil, to you, to the people participating. I just want to say to humanity, keep intending and asking for your most benevolent, best trajectory, because your trajectory, your most benevolent, best alignment with the divine, that's going to lead you exactly where you're meant to be. And that is where humanity's going. We are going that way, and it will accelerate your process. And you can ask that it be done in the most benevolent, beneficial ways possible. You can ask for the most loving, kind ways possible, if that's what you want. Your most benevolent, best trajectory, your most benevolent, best alignment with the divine. And you can ask for that on a daily basis. Please allow this to be so. Allow me to align with my most benevolent, best trajectory, my most aligned divine self. And that is always going to steer you right, because the universe is innately intelligent. Your higher self is inner self, source self. The divinity within you is guiding you and leading you, and at the same time honoring your free will choice on the journey to experience it the way you'd like. So say what you're wanting, say what you're choosing, not from a place of pleading or desperation, but from a place of your mastery, commanding it respectfully. And I hope that.
Yeah.
Yes.
30 seconds. What are 3 tips or 3 things you do every day as part of your rituals to have that kind of coherence and alignment?
Definitely, I do meditation and healing on a daily basis. On a daily basis, I do that. On a daily basis, I do time in nature. Definitely that. On a daily basis, I spend time in some kind of natural water if I can. I mean, I lived in Florida. I just was in Arkansas on the lake bed. or even, you know, so some kind of recreation of blessing and purifying, divinitizing myself on a daily basis in some form of water. Those are three things: clearing, resolving, breathing, meditating, and nature, time in nature.
I love it.
Those,
You know, and in the past me that was a little more ambitious was like, oh, those things feel like a waste of time. But the fact is, when you get there, or if you're in 5D, there is no time. When you're in nature, it's the most beautiful thing. And yet it's almost like the nature meditates you.
yes, well, it restores you to balance. One other thing I would add in there is body movement, physical body movement, not from an old paradigm way, which is like you got to exercise, push it, wait. No, from a new paradigm way, which is the joy of moving the body, of allowing the physical forms. So it could be dance, it could be yoga, it could be, you know, the 5 Tibet, you know, it could be anything that feels good and right to you, to move the body and enjoy the expression through the body. So those are the 4 things. If you can do them 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day, that alone those are what I call your go-tos. You gotta have them as part of it.
I love it. Someone thanks you for the gifts. I don't know if they meant in this conversation or on your website, those free gifts. And someone said, DJ said, I've learned so much. You're my new fave. Thank you. What was that website?
Oh, it's my name. It's just my name, Lori, LORI SPAGNA, LoriSpagna.com. I'm also all over YouTube and Amazon. And thank you for those lovely comments and feedback. And thank you, Scott.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for having me, for speaking with me and sharing with me today. Thanks to everyone listening. Love you guys.
Welcome. Thank you. This was great. This was great. And I know we made a difference. I love helping you amplify your message. And thank you for all you do, Lori.